Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Research Methods. And in today's session, we will be examining the key elements found in every research. Now, these are the research aim, research objectives, and articulating the research questions. These are very essential to any research project. So, by the end of today's session, you should be able to demonstrate a rich understanding of the element of a proposal and also apply knowledge towards formulating a good research aim, a good research set of objectives, and a good set of research questions. So a quick refresher, right? As you are aware, this course introduces you to the research process and provides you with an overview of the concepts associated with conducting a good research. Now, from my experience as a researcher, right, it is only possible for you to conduct a proper research or a proper piece of work if you are familiar with the relevant ideas or the relevant concepts and the relevant requirements. So that is why you need to keep up to date with the lectures and the tutorial sessions and the recommended text for this course. And I trust this helps. So let's move on for today. Right, and I will kickstart with the first question. What is a research proposal? Now, a research proposal is a document which proposes a research project. It is a concise and coherent summary of any proposed research. Now, a research proposal also goes ahead to outline the general area of any study within which your research falls. Now, this includes the current state of knowledge and maybe any other current arguments. Now, producing a proposal is a crucial part of the research process. For instance, if you are applying for any research funding, or you're sitting for an examination, or you're seeking to apply for a research degree, then you will need to come to understand, or you will come to understand that one needs to put a great deal of effort into preparing a proposal. Now, a proposal is written in a reporting style format. Now, what I've done is I've been able to provide a proposal template on the Blackboard course site for your attention. So your proposal helps you in clarifying your thoughts. In this case, you are able to organize and structure your thoughts or your research ideas into a coherent statement for your planned research. Now, a good point to keep in mind is that a proposal is only as good as the possibility of achieving your ideas. Now, most students often undertake research which are not possible or which are not achievable. So that is why we are always here, we, your tutors, are always here to ensure that the scope of the proposed research is achievable and achievable within the given time frame. So a good proposal outlines a strategy for research investigation. It refers to and discusses related literature, includes an introduction to the topic, to the particular issues or the topical issues and the problem, and of course, provides a specific time or activity detail for your chosen project. Now, the contents of proposals actually vary, right? But I do believe that the following elements or the following are the key elements which one would need to consider within this course. Now, first of all is the title. All right, your title builds on your research ideas. Now, the truth about titles is this may change as your research progresses or as your study progresses, And it's quite important to get the title right. And of course, I always like to point out to my students that the title should be an area of interest to you, an area that you believe matters much to you. Now, the next section is the introduction. Now, the introduction section is an opportunity for you to demonstrate to the readership. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate to the audience that your proposal or your research study is worth reading. Now, the introduction should be able to clue the reader in. You must be able to catch the reader. You must be able to gain the attention of the reader. Thus, in this introduction section, you should be able to warrant the attention. Now, a quick tip here is that your introduction should announce your topic. It should provide context, and it should provide a rationale for your work. And it must be able, again, to catch the reader's interest. Now, next comes the research background. Remember, the introduction and background, I would point out they shouldn't be together. They are two different, two distinct sections or two distinct concepts. Now, the background, which is expressed in the form of a problem, right, is also known as a problem statement, right? The background is expressed in the form of a problem that needs to be solved. Now, the readership or the audience or the examiner will be looking for evidence here, as you should be able to demonstrate knowledge of up-to-date literature. In fact, here you need to be able to also clarify where your proposal fits into existing debates. Hence, you should be able to identify a gap in previous work that has been done. I'd also point out, and I think please note, that the literature in this background section is not the same as the literature in your literature review section. Now, the literature review section on its part is where you provide an overview of the key literature from which you intend to draw. Here you are expected to present current knowledge, including substantive findings, as well as theoretical or methodological contributions on a particular topic. So in doing so, you should be able to provide a good summary and a critical evaluation of a range of studies in relation to the research problem being investigated. So quickly, the methodology section, this is one of the most important sections, right? It presents the techniques or the specific procedures that is used to process, select, and analyze key but relevant information about the topic. Now, this happens to be a very vital section in any research. So what I do believe as we proceed, we'll come to be familiar with all these elements, and it shouldn't be something to make us scared. So but I think at this point, it's good for us to proceed to examine the key concept that actually shaped today's session. So we will kickstart with our second question of the day. And that question is, what is a research question, or what are research questions? So I'll give you 1 minute to think about it. What does a research question mean to you? Right? What are research questions? So let me come in here now. So a research question or research questions are questions that a research sets out to answer. It is one of the initial steps in a research project. It is recognized to be an actionable inquiry into a specific issue or into a specific concern. Now, the research question is very important, as it determines if the study will probably undertake a qualitative or a quantitative research. The research question also determines the collection and analysis, and in real sense, the entire methodology process. So a good point again to keep in mind is that a well-framed research question will enable you to improve knowledge on any important topic. So quick summary, research questions influences not only the scope of an investigation, but also how the research will be conducted, right? It is an explicit statement in the form of a question of what it is that you want to investigate, of what it is that the researcher wants to find out. So now let's take a look at some examples. Now, like I said, research questions play a huge role in realizing the project in a practical sense, right? Focuses on the aim, outlines objectives and methods to be used. And of course, it's very, very relevant. If you're looking at a wider population sample, that's usually a quantitative-based approach. And if you're looking at a specific context, a smaller sample size, you'll probably be looking at a qualitative-based. So let's look at some quick examples. So an example of research question is, why have organizations introduced team briefing? So this is what you want to investigate. Why have organizations introduced team briefing? Now, the objective is to identify organizations' objectives for team briefing schemes, or to investigate why organizations have introduced team briefing. Do you see a relationship here between the question and objective? The question is in a question format. The objective sets out what you want to do. So somehow there appears to be a relationship between these two. A second example, right? Research question, how can the effectiveness of a library briefing scheme be measured? Or how can the effectiveness of library briefing schemes be measured? Now, the objective here is to establish suitable effectiveness criteria for library briefing schemes. Is there any relationship here? Do you see any similarities? The same applies to the previous example. Research question is a question format. Objective sets out what you want to achieve. Third example, right? Has the team briefing been effective? Research objective here is to describe the extent to which the effectiveness criteria for team briefing have been met. Right, so I think it's quite evident that there's a strong interplay between research questions and research objectives. Right, as discussed, the research questions are the specific concerns that you want to answer. Right, while the objectives are the statement of what you aim to achieve through your research. So indeed, yes, you are correct. There is that relationship, and those relationship signifies that interplay between both the research question and the research objective. So the next question is, what is a research aim? What is a research aim? But before I move to research aim, just to also, I think, clarify again, right? In terms of the objective and the questions, you can actually confidently state that the research objectives indicate the expected outcome of the research, right? And the research questions indicate the directions for the data generation to achieve each objective. Hence, a rational relationship between the two is said to exist. So basically, in your research proposal, right, when you're thinking about your research proposal, right, your research questions should get along with the research objectives, right, to keep your research organized and within context. I think that's clear. So I wanted to clarify on that. So let's move on to, what does a research aim mean? What does a research aim mean? Any ideas? What does a research aim mean? 1 minute, think about it. What do you think a research aim means? Well, the research aim displays the aspiration or intentions of any given research study. Now, the research aim is usually articulated in a sentence, and it should summarize in a specific phrased way what you want to achieve at the end of your research. Now, your research aim must encapsulate the general motivation, your general intention, right, for that you had in mind when you started the research or when you intended to start the research. And it must provide the purpose of the research, stipulating the overall goal that you wish to achieve. Right, so the research aim kind of presents the core topic, uses a general action word, indicates the context, the geographic context, cultural context, organizational context. Now, quick tips, research aim, it must be clear, right? It shouldn't be wordy. You don't need more than 20 words or less, right? It should be straightforward, specific. You should use an action word, right? So use an action word, right? The aim of this research is to investigate. The aim of this research is to analyze. The aim of this research is to assess. The aim of this research is to compare. Right? Research aim is to describe. The aim of this is to describe, to discuss, to review, to outline, to classify, to explain, to discover, to analyze, to construct, to summarize, to assess, to evaluate, to support. So these are kind of the key terminologies you want to use in coining your research aim. So the next question is, what are research objectives? What are research objectives? Any ideas here? Think about it. What are research objectives? So the research objectives actually summarize what one hopes and will be achieved. Right? As earlier stated, your objectives should be stated also using action verbs. And these action verbs are quite unique because they should be specific enough to be identified or to be measured. So your objectives should be stated using action verbs that are specific enough to be measured. So examples of these action verbs are to identify, to investigate, to appraise, to determine. There are so many of those kind of adverbs. So research objectives should use those kind of adverbs. The objective of this research is to identify, right? The objective of this research is to investigate. Objective of this research is to appraise. The objective of this research is to determine. So remember, your objectives must be clear, specific statements, and it should identify what you want to accomplish, right? And the good thing about objectives is that they act as milestones, and milestones which need to be achieved, right? They need to be met. And it is only when these objectives have been achieved that one can confidently state that the overall aim has been achieved too, right? Research objectives also tries to concisely describe what research tries to achieve. And it also summarizes the accomplishment that the researcher wishes to achieve through the project. And of course, it provides direction to the study. So some quick tips again is the objectives must be practical. They must be actionable. So that's why I recommended the adverbs, right? It should reflect the phases of the research to be addressed, right? And by forming your research objective, you should identify the gaps in knowledge that need to be addressed. And I think this will actually help you come up with suitable objectives for your research project. But one of the most important tips I do have, I always tell my students, is well-written objectives should be aligned and they must be smart. They must be smart, S-M-A-R-T. Right, so we'll come to speak about smart again. But again, some other quick tips, your research objectives, I would always point out, it shouldn't be more than 5 objectives, right? Anything more than 5 objectives, you're looking at a longitudinal research that will take you maybe 2 years, 3 years. So keep it simple. 3 objectives is fine, 4 is fine, maximum of 5. Because if you list 5 objectives, you must be able to achieve those 5 objectives, right? So I would keep it simple, 3 to 5, 3, 4, worst case scenario, or maximum of 5. Right? Remember, your objectives should be clear, concise style, less than 20 words, right? And it must display a particular approach. So I mentioned about smart objectives, and I think this is quite important, right? My advice again is always keep your objectives very smart, right? Objectives are smart if they are specific, if they are measurable, if they are achievable, if they are realistic and time-bound. I like to replace realistic with relevant, because I think somehow there seems to be some confusion around achievable and realistic. So I always try to use relevant instead of realistic. So I think with specific, right, this implies that your objective should describe the result that is desired so that it is well detailed, focused, and well defined. Here, you should state exactly what you wish to achieve with each objective. In terms of measurable, my advice here is it is important that the objective is measurable, as this will help you know when or whether an objective has been achieved. So the kind of questions you want to ask yourself here is, can these milestones be indicated through the realized goals? Now, in terms of achievable, my advice is that for an objective to be achievable, the researcher should be willing and able to achieve it. There must be that motivation. There must be that drive. And that is why I always point out your topic must be an area of interest, an area that you like, an area that you enjoy, an area that you want to examine. So because if it's something you do not believe in, if it's unachievable, then there's a chance you would actually lose that motivation to proceed. Now, I mentioned realistic. I like to replace realistic with relevant, because in most cases, the concept of achievable and realistic are usually used interchangeably. So I would point out that the better term here will be relevant. This means that the objective is appropriate and aligns to the purpose to be achieved. Then lastly is timely or time-bound. And of course, it is necessary to set a date or a time where the objective should have been accomplished. And I think this actually contributes to making your objectives measurable. Now, those deadlines ensure urgency and prompt action so that you as a researcher, you are kind of accountable to your commitments. So that's it for today. Go through the slides once again. Feel free to watch this recorded session again. The tutorial session to actually help us design our objectives, our aim, and our research questions. And I trust we will do well. Bye.